everyone, welcome back to another F1 Fantasy video in the pre-season. I'm so excited. We are so much closer to the start of the season than when I first started making these videos. I believe this is video 3 or 4. I've lost count already of the F1 Fantasy pre-season videos. And for today's F1 Fantasy content, I'm going to be giving you my F1 Fantasy predictions heading into the 2026 season. Because realistically, we've just had test 1. I'm going to make a video about the tests once they've all finished. So the shakedown test 1 and test 2 when we've got the most amount of data. I'll make a video about that. But for now, we're in a little bit of a grey area where I can just have a little bit of another fun F1 Fantasy video to make. So make sure, if you like F1 Fantasy content, to like and subscribe, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be having F1 Fantasy content during the preseason every Wednesday until the game is live, and then it'll go a little bit more into a crazy schedule, because then I'll be putting out every single video I can about the game and any changes or whatnot. But for my F1 Fantasy predictions, I have 6 predictions for you coming up. Now, it was 5, but I actually added one literally about 2 minutes just before I was about to record this video. And it is the 6th prediction. And it's quite a funny one, so stay tuned for that. But for prediction 1, I have that the valuation for most assets will be wrong. Now, do I think that means that it's going to be 2023 levels of bad, where Aston Martin came in and were just completely undervalued? McLaren had these insane mid-season upgrades, so they were completely undervalued. No. But I do think, with just the new regs and how little we have to go off, considering we thought it was Mercedes who looked good, and they still do, but now all of a sudden, long run pace is potentially looking like Ferrari have got it half decent, being the front runners for this season. Then you've also got Red Bull, who look pretty decent with their engine right now. And that's without even talking about McLaren. So I do think, especially in the A-tier constructors, who will definitely be this season, again, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull, I think all of them are going to be slightly off where they should be. I'm not going to talk about McLaren because that's something in prediction 2. I have a feeling that either going to overvalue all of the assets just in case. So we've got like Russell at like 29.5 million, Verstappen at 31 million, and like the Ferrari still at like 25 to 26, 27 million-ish range. Or we're going to have the complete opposite, where they put like Ferrari, where I predicted them, around like 21, 22 million, and we have the same sort of thing what we had with Oscar Piastri last season, where that's just way too cheap of an asset for them. You've also got Kimi Antonelli, where I think he'll be completely undervalued, just because, same thing as Piastri from McLaren last year, I think they'll do him dirty at around 22, 23 million, and that's without even talking about the B-tier drivers. If Behrman, right now with how Haas is looking, we'll see exactly where it carries on, but if Behrman is anything below 10 million, he's going to be an absolute steal. He was brilliant in F1 Fantasy last season, and Haas have been looking pretty good. And honestly, it's hard to tell where the worst constructor is, so we're going to be having some of those B-tier constructors a lot lower than they probably should be, because they can't just have everything at the same valuation and just go, well, we don't really know, so we're just going to chuck all of them at 8 million. There will be differences, and most of them I do think will be wrong. At least for the first few races, and then they'll all adjust because of the price changing algorithm and all of that malarkey. But that is prediction 1. Heading into prediction 2, now the reason I didn't actually mention it in the first one is because it's a little tie into prediction 1, but McLaren will be overvalued. So actually this is more of like a prediction 1.5, so actually maybe there are 5 predictions in this video. McLaren will definitely be overvalued. I haven't heard much from McLaren from testing, potentially moving in silence, but all of the talk has been about Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Mercedes definitely the most. And of course, with McLaren being 2025 champions in both drivers and constructors, there's no way in hell they're below 25 million on any of their assets. Maybe Piastri will start around 24-ish million, but there's no way below 24 million minimum. And if it is the case that they come in around the 3rd, 4th fastest car, that's going to be a little bit overvalued for them. I do think as well, Lando Norris, the driver's champion from last year, I'd be surprised if he was anything below 26 million, and I think that's going to be pushing it for him. I don't think McLaren are going to be fighting right from the start at the front of the field. I say front of the field. They'll be within the top 8 in qualifying in Australia, most likely. But in F1 Fantasy, when we're looking at these drivers like 25 million plus, this is your one and only driver you're going to be picking, who's probably going to be a 2 times driver. And I could see just Norris and Piastri just not being the ones for the first race of the season. But let's see how much that ages going into test 2 and the practice sessions in Australia. Now heading into prediction 3 is another slight tie-in to actually the mock-up teams I did in my last video. Go check it out if you want to see my price predictions. They were done before testing, so already some of them have aged like milk, especially Aston Martin. But the first big choice for teams will be Antonelli and 2 big constructors versus Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc, one or the other, with 1 big constructor. Now you could also put Antonelli / Hadjar. Let's say that you can have that as well. It's the same sort of driver situation, but it's the same thing that we had last year, where especially if the price algorithm changes a little bit, maybe you do just want to go play it safe and balance your points out with just 2 good constructors where they have better reliability, because once we start picking B tier constructors, we know they tend to have worse reliability. You also have the issue of, we won't know heading into Australia 100% who is going to be that 2 times option. So you really are putting yourself at a big risk situation if you do put all of your eggs into that Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc basket, if they're like the most expensive assets in the game, and then it goes wrong, and then all of a sudden you have another constructor and a B tier constructor, and they're not getting you any points. But that is, for now, still probably the smarter way to play it because of budget building, and if the game stays the same, budget building is more important heading into the first few race weekends. Say first few, it's for basically like 2/3 of the season, but 100% it will be on our minds, especially as we know how many DNFs were in Australia last year. It was raining, but with new regs, maybe you just want to play it safe and spread out your budget a little bit more with like an Antonelli 2 times, so that you can afford, let's say, a Mercedes and a Ferrari together, who just look a lot more reliable than an Alpine or Audi or anyone you had to bring in to partner up with that other big tier constructor. Now for prediction 4, you might see that I'm in a slightly different area and that I'm in completely different clothing. It's because it is Monday of the day I'm actually putting the video out, and I've changed my mind on prediction 4, and I've actually gone for something different. And this prediction is that B tier driver choices will be more important at the start of the season than the A tier driver choices. Now, the reason I say this is because last year with B tier drivers, a lot of the time it was, oh, who looks good to go up in budget? Oh, who are the poisonous assets and all of that stuff. But heading into Australia, we won't really have any of that as much to an extent. But also, obviously with these new regs, it's everything I've been talking about all the time in this preseason in F1 Fantasy, that if they keep the same DNF system, it'll probably be going up to -22 or staying at -20. With the reliability of new regs coming in, I can see a lot of big swing in points between B tier drivers. You could have someone like Ollie Behrman, who has a half decent Australia race, comes like P6, P7, whatnot, and gets around 18 points. And then if you went for someone like a Gasly and he had a DNF, and that's a -20 or a -22, that's already a 40-point swing in your favour if you pick the right B tier driver. And I can tell you, from A tier driver to A tier driver, even if you get the 2 times wrong, you're rarely going to get a situation where it's a 40-point gap. So I really do think, especially with B tier assets normally having worse reliability than the A tier assets, combined with potential crashes, we don't even know how the starts of races are going to be happening, because apparently that's all up in the air about how that's going to happen. All of it just comes down into my head. B tier assets are going to have very, very big swings in favour of if they had a DNF or if they didn't. So keep an eye on that. I really do think B tier options, especially heading into Australia, are the most important thing we need to get right in our teams right now, so we don't get those DNFs. Basically, just pick the most reliable drivers out of the bunch from what we see from the testing and just the practice sessions, and just hope for the best. Then heading into my 5th prediction, and we actually have quite an interesting one actually. There will be no assets between 12 and 18 million at the start of the game. So last year, we actually had a couple of them heading into the first race weekend. I believe it was Williams, Sainz, I believe Albon was potentially there as well. Lawson, I think he was a little bit above that or just below it. But we had quite a few there where basically that was F1 saying, we don't really know where Williams lands in all of this. We don't know where Antonelli and Lawson land in all of this. In the sense of they could bridge the gap between 5th and 4th fastest constructor. But right now, heading into 2026, we don't really have that standout constructor just yet that is showing that they are going to be able to get closer to the top four of McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari. And with that, I just don't see any constructor going above 12 million for that. And with that, their assets as well. And then on the other side, I think Antonelli, even though I was saying I do think they'll undervalue him, but that's just because he'll be in a Mercedes, he'll even still be put around 20 to 23 million in price. He won't be as low as 18 million like last time. Hadjar as well, in that Red Bull second seat, I don't think he'll be below that as well, because Red Bull, hopefully, they can sort out this second driver curse now with the new regs. But again, I have actually quite a lot of faith in Hadjar doing half decent, and he's been doing half well in testing so far, so I think he'll be more about valued 19.5 million. So with all of that bundled together, I really do feel like we're going to have like a very, very big gap between the A tier constructor and drivers to the B tier constructor and drivers. Who will actually be the lowest of the A tiers and the highest of the B tiers, I don't know just yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all of that. And then finally, prediction 6, the one I added just before I started recording. The game is not going to launch until the start of March. Now, the reason I added this was also just a little bit to poke fun at them for F1 Fantasy in 2025, because as we know, it was a little bit of a mess how quickly we all had to scramble our teams together. But in an ideal scenario, I would want F1 Fantasy released so by the time this goes out, it'll be Monday. It's actually Sunday evening right now. It will be next Sunday. I would like to have seen F1 Fantasy put out the game. That's in an ideal world, because that gives us a good 2 weeks to sort out our teams. I don't think we're going to get more than a week, and I really do think if they were to release it, it'd be on the Monday of that race week, which would be heading into March by that point. And I will say, I really hope this prediction doesn't come true. I do want the game to come out, and there's just more we can talk about on the channel as well with the games out. We can know about the chips we're using, because I want to put my chip guide out, and I'm all of a sudden being like, I will actually put it out. That's my next video on Wednesday, but I might have to do an updated one if anything else drastic comes out. But there's so much more we can do with the game. So many more people could join it if they put it out in Feb. But I really, really do think they're going to do the same thing as 2025 and put it out in March. Mark my words, my guess is F1 Fantasy is going to come out on the 2nd of March. And hey, I think that would be a mistake if they did that, but I think that's what's going to happen. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below, what are any of your predictions heading into the F1 Fantasy season for 2026? I just, for one, cannot wait to get started on it. Just the F1 in general and F1 Fantasy. It can't come soon enough. But yeah, let's see how it all goes. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.